Hello, welcome back. My name is Douglas Johnson. I am a certified yoga teacher at the advanced 500-hour level. I'm also a kirtan artist and ordained minister. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about choosing peace. Before I do that, I do want to thank the community who makes these talks possible. This is a communal effort. This is a group effort. My patrons contribute financially, monthly, in a way that I can rely on that income and set time and resources aside to provide these talks on the internet free of charge. These talks and other things related with what I do. So it really is that community that makes that possible. This is not simply me. So I want to thank them, and if you'd like to become a part of that community, please check out the links below. Okay, so choosing peace. Why are we talking about this today? Well, because it's come up for me personally. I recently had an individual who is from my past, who's come back into my life, who is somebody who generally creates a lot of conflict and chaos around them. They are somebody who they make their own choices, but their choices affect others, and very often in a way that creates others to get very destabilized or lose their peace or lose their cool, lose their calm. And so very often there's a lot of conflict around this individual. And so as this individual has come back into my life, I've found that that is happening inside of me. And this brings us to the point of today's talk. There's a few points in this talk that I'm hoping to make. One is that these practices that I give you, these are not meant to be conceptual ideas that are done in the abstract, which is, I think, maybe how you take these talks. You think, oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, choose peace. And then you go away and you don't. You might, in one instance, choose it, but then the rest of the day you're just going about your business as normal. You're not choosing peace. No, that is not how spiritual practices are really meant to be done. Now, I'm not saying that there is no benefit in that. So if that's the way you practice and you get benefit, that's great. That makes sense to me. I don't think that that is a problem per se. But one thing I've learned being on this path is, at least when it comes to really deep, transformative spirituality, and this is just my experience, okay? That's why I'm here, is to share my experience and hopefully help you take shortcuts to not have to relearn the things that I've learned, okay? So everything is here not to make you feel bad or feel like you're doing it wrong, or to make others feel bad or point out how others don't know what they're talking about. No, I could care less. My sole purpose in these talks is to try and help you and to speed up the process for you, okay? So for me, these practices need to be practiced constantly. So again, somebody coming into my life from the past who is very antagonistic or problematic, this is, in a sense, an abstract idea. And this is what the ego and the mind grasp onto. And they immediately go back into the past and say, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened, this person is like this, they're like that, this is going to happen. And then it projects that into the future. And because of that, we lose our peace because we aren't in the present moment anymore. Now we are projecting into the future. And this is problematic for us. So the only thing we can do, the only thing we can ever do, is practice in this moment and choose in this moment. And I cannot emphasize the power of choice, how important choice is in shaping our experience, okay? So I'll share with you my experience this morning. I felt a lot of contraction in my body due to situations and things revolving around this person. They are, again, true to their nature. They're drawing in a lot of people, and it's causing a lot of people to have to make alterations in their plans, in their life. It's causing some people to lose their peace and get very upset. And so, again, this is something that just due to the nature of this person, this is generally what we will experience. And so my body, my mind are reacting in much the same way. The difference is that I know that I have a choice, okay? And that's very important. So I can feel the energy of disruption arising within awareness, the space of awareness. But, and again, the way the ego and the conscious mind tend to interpret that is I lost my peace. This person is causing me to lose my peace. But you only have that perspective if you are focused in a very narrow way, which is the nature of egoic focus and mind. So we focus in on those uncomfortable feelings and we say, I lost my peace because I feel this way. However, what I would recommend as a meditator, awakened individual, yogi, hopefully you have done practices that have made you aware of the infinite space of loving awareness, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. I don't like to get bogged down in terminology too much or semantics. So for me, the loving space of awareness, that loving space of awareness is infinite and it's peaceful. Okay, things arise within it, like what I'm feeling now, and thoughts, there might be thoughts, projections into the future, judgments, all these types of things, and those may not feel very peaceful. But if we pay attention and we have done the work previously, then we know that there is this background of peace in which these things arise, okay? Now, if things are really strong, awareness gets just naturally drawn to something, and awareness has this ability to open up and to become very narrow. That's just one of its superpowers, you could say. It can identify in a very narrow way. So if we're not careful, when we lose our peace, whatever it is, when we feel a certain protective energy of anger or, again, an energy of protection, of needing to set boundaries, this energy, I'd say most people don't like the way that energy feels. It feels like, oh, I'm losing my peace because of the way the body responds. But if we have enough awareness and we look, we find that peace was not lost. Just because there is an arising, that arising does not mean that awareness has to identify with the arising or has to get sucked into it or focus on it. And so we can take a step back and recognize that there's so much more going on here and that it's peaceful. In a sense, even though there's this energy there, there's still peace all around it. And that energy isn't necessarily not peace, if that makes sense. Again, if you're new to this, that probably will not make sense, and you will just find yourself sucked in. These are sometimes called by one of my teachers Velcro thoughts. So we have a thought or an emotion, and it's like Velcro. We get stuck to it. Awareness does not feel like it can untangle itself from it. So if this is the case for you, you may want to take up some practices. Practices like yoga when done properly, meditation, yoga nidra, even chanting. All of these practices can begin to create some space and make you aware of the space that's already there. Create space is not the right term. I said create space, but I shouldn't have said that. Okay, really the proper term is make you aware of the space that's there. As you become aware of this space, you realize that just because something arises in consciousness does not mean that you need to act or do anything about it. You don't need to fix it, okay? And you don't need to identify with it. And so we can choose peace. And in my teaching, I associate this peace with the Bible saying, the peace that passeth all understanding. It's a peace that doesn't make sense. If an individual comes into your life and they are antagonistic and they create a lot of trouble for people, it's very natural to feel a reaction to that and to say, well, I'm losing my peace because of this individual. But again, we need to be aware of the peace that passeth all understanding, the peace that is always there. Another point I'd like to make about this is that from the ultimate perspective, we do not want to give our power away to anybody. So if I say this person is causing me to lose my peace, well, then I'm giving them a lot of power, aren't I? Now, I'm not saying I can do this perfectly all the time, okay? That's not the point of my channel or my sharing. I'm not here to put myself up as the ultimate example that you need to follow. However, I do have enough experience, both personally and guiding others, and with scripture and teachings to know what works and what doesn't. So just because I can't do everything perfectly, it doesn't mean I can't help guide you. Just like a coach doesn't necessarily need to be a world champion boxer in order to coach someone to become a world champion boxer, okay? So don't look at me and say, well, you're not perfect or you don't do that all the time. Sure, I'm human, okay? And I'll tell you quite honestly, I believe all teachers are. I believe that if you think your teacher or a certain teacher is beyond human, then you probably just don't know them that well. Most of these myths and things are about teachers that live very secluded lives, private lives, where not many people have access to them on a personal basis. And so it's very easy to create a myth about such an individual, or they're from the past, like Jesus or Buddha. Again, very easy to say, well, they were perfect. They would have done the perfect thing in this or that situation. My issue with this is I'm not even sure that such a thing as perfection exists. I think perfection is in the eye of the beholder. So a Buddhist might view the Buddha as perfect, and yet a Christian might look at them and find Buddha wanting. Same vice versa, okay? So any kind of idea of, oh, there's this perfect human that we're trying to aspire to be, I'm not sure that I'm buying it, and it isn't really what I teach. I teach peace, love, and joy, and that this is something that we can experience in this lifetime. We don't have to wait to die. We don't have to accumulate tons of good karma. We can experience this here and now, but we have to know the nature of mind and heart and thought and reality in order to guide ourselves into that experience. In a sense, it's already here. It's already your birthright. It is what you are in essence. But the essence of spiritual teaching is that the ego is a false sense of self. It's a false narrative of who and what you are. And so spiritual practices and teachings, the ones I'm interested in anyway, are guideposts. They are signs. They are pointers to lead us through the confusion of misidentifying our true nature and finding our true nature, okay? So this talk is really no different than that. So moment by moment, we choose. You may not even realize you're choosing, but you're choosing. Even right now, you're choosing. Okay, so we can choose peace, or we can choose war, to fight. We can choose conflict. We can choose to identify with the things that take our peace away. Now again, I recognize for some of you it may not feel like a choice, in which case, again, I recommend practices like yoga practices. I've got probably hundreds of classes online now, both yin and yang in nature, that you can do online, free of charge, completely free of charge. These are classes, the same classes that students here locally pay money to go to a studio and do with me, okay? If you're local, you can come, pay money and do yoga with me, that's great. But if you're not, that's accessible. You can go to a local yoga studio, but it's free. My classes are free. So saying I don't have money isn't really a good excuse. I have other practices like guided meditations. I have meditation instruction, okay? There's a lot of resources that I have made available personally, and I know there's lots more out there. This is somewhat related with my talk last week, where I talked about peace and the importance of peace and relaxation. I think I titled it with relaxation. So peace, serenity, tranquility, relaxation, these are absolutely essential, because without it, we can't see these arisings for what they are. We identify with them and we get sucked into it, into the narrative. We get sucked into identifying with something that does not feel peaceful, but we're losing sight of the background that is always peaceful, okay? The peace that passeth all understanding, the transcendent oneness that is always there and peaceful. We can touch this at any point once we learn what we're looking for. Now, this might take many years or even decades, okay? It did for me. I hope that with instruction and guidance like this, it won't take you so long, okay? But if it does, I don't want you to feel poorly or badly. If you listen to a talk like this, you're like, what is he talking about? There's no way I can feel peaceful in this situation or that situation. And I understand. I am likely the same way. There are likely situations that if you put me in them, I would start to lose my peace. Now, I do want to make at least one other point before I finish up. Now, just because we have our peace, that does not mean that we will necessarily look peaceful outwardly. A very interesting phenomenon for anyone who's done deep meditation. I was talking with somebody just the other day, a student of mine, and he was talking about his meditation practice. And he said that if you looked at him sitting in the room, you would think this is someone who is experiencing very deep peace and tranquility. He said, but inwardly, it's like a war, turmoil. It's like a fight, okay? So this is very common. If we see people sitting Zen meditation, someone who has not done that practice might look at those individuals and say, oh, how serene and peaceful they are. I bet they don't have any thoughts and they're just sitting there and they're floating on a blissful cloud. Well, if you've done this style of meditation, you know that that can be the furthest from the truth. I'm not saying one never experiences that, but one will likely experience the exact opposite of that, okay? Now, I want to make clear that this can also be true of our actions in the world. Sometimes someone who has not lost their peace, who is very calm inwardly, may express what looks like anger or frustration, or they may be quite forceful in their words and action. And if we are not very savvy with these things, we might snap to a judgment that, oh, this individual lost their peace because they're raising their voice, or they are doing this or that other thing that we think is evidence of someone losing their peace. It is possible that, yes, maybe they did lose their peace. However, A, it's not our place to judge, and then B, we don't know. Because someone who has reached an advanced state of spirituality, they can express that in any way. It does not mean they actually lost their sense of peace. We can be moved by energies arising within us, and that energy can actually be love or compassion in action, and it can be quite dynamic. An example I like to give is Jesus turning over the money changers' tables, okay? This is an action that if we knew somebody, I like to put it in the context of a yoga studio, because a lot of my followers are yogis. So let's say that we're there and we're in the yoga studio and we're about to start class, and someone comes in and starts taking all the Lululemon merchandise off the wall and throwing it in the trash. And they say, this should not be a place of commerce. This should be a place for spirituality, right? Most of us would be like, wow, what a jerk. We wouldn't say, wow, what a righteous individual, so spiritual, okay? But because it's Jesus, we immediately say, well, he must have been spiritual. That must have been the right thing to do. We don't put ourselves in the perspective or context of the people who were there looking on, okay? Now, I'm not trying to critique Jesus. I'm trying to give you some examples. So, did Jesus lose his peace in that moment? I don't honestly know, okay? But if we're supposed to believe that Jesus is the Prince of Peace, then we might say, no, he didn't. That this was a dynamic energy that arose within him. Doesn't mean he lost his peace, but he let that energy move him and express in the world, okay? So I want to be clear about that, because sometimes people hear about peace and then they think that they always need to talk in a monotone voice and whisper and be quiet, and they can't ever be dynamic in the world and move in a forceful way. The world is dynamic. Life is dynamic. We want to stay connected with our inner peace at all times, because that allows us to experience joy. It allows us to express love and to have compassion. It's very, very important. But outwardly, we may not look any different than anyone else. I'll remind everybody that spirituality is never about outward appearances. If you're getting too wrapped up in outward appearances, you are missing the mark. You are getting distracted, okay? Spirituality is not about looks. It's not about appearances. It's not about even what we do. It's about our inner heart, mind, inner peace, never losing that. All right, everyone. I hope you got a lot from today's talk. As always, please reach out with questions. If you're on YouTube, you can help out by liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. If you'd like to go a little above and beyond that, become a part of the community that helps create these talks, please check out the links to Patreon below. Till next time, everyone, namaste, and have a beautiful day.